title of my chapter is Wildflower, or Waiting to Bloom, and it's about finding hope in my infertility journey. And this was about 3 years ago. But my husband and I, we had a long struggle with infertility, and just walking that journey and finding hope through that journey during the years of waiting and kind of in the wilderness, and really just learning to rely on God and strengthening our relationship with each other, and also learning that it's okay to ask for help. And because you struggle with infertility, it doesn't make you any less valuable. It We are all worthy, and really accepting help is a sign, is a sign of strength and also bravery. And I just had a really hard time acknowledging that I needed help at the start.
My chapter is at a time when I was quite young and naive, and it's before I had a real grasp of what was going on with the world. And so the experience of having a community and having that sense of comfort, having a sense of familiarity, and not ever questioning where you're going, what you're doing, who's with you, and how we didn't, we could say we could take it for granted, but I was too young to understand what being taken for granted meant, or the experience of that. So once I was removed from that community and lost that sense of comfort and familiarity, there are many things that came after that. And I think there's a lot of things people can relate to, because change is inevitable. We know this as we get older, but when you're younger and you're put into it for the first time, basically, that change and the unraveling of everything and the effects of people around you, people you don't know, people who judge you from the outside, and what it does to you internally, what it reflects on the outside, and how you can carry that around with you for a really long time.
And my chapter is called Invisible Scars. And what that means to me is that we never know what the person next to us is dealing with. It could be our spouse, it could be a colleague, it could be a total stranger, but we have no idea what they're dealing with that you know nothing about. And I think it's really important for us to think about that and think about the people around us. And we're always so involved in our own stresses and our own schedules and all that we tend to live in our own head, and that's okay. But when you have a chance to show kindness to someone else, you never know, like opening the door for somebody or saying hello, and how much that may impact them if they're having a really bad day or they're struggling with something.
Yeah, sure. It's about facing the why of addiction. Just to lay it all out right off the bat, I was struggling with porn addiction for a long time, and the reason I no one really taught me how to express my masculine energy, and in a world where we're told toxic masculinity, I would kind of hide that masculine part of me, and it led me to a point where I would just ask why, and when you peel back a few layers of why, it makes people very uncomfortable. So it's no wonder why I could never really find answers. So, but once I got to the point where I really started going within myself and trying to really, understand that we're all the same at the end of the day, that we have an animal body, we have, desires, and how to, connect with God and tie that in. It's how to be in the world, but not of it.
It wasn't easy for me. I decided to write a chapter about somewhat of my journey over the last 3-4 years, and just my transformation from kind of just being a participant in life to deciding to take some direction. And a lot of that leads to me learning about the community where people can hire coaches and invest in themselves and get help with certain mindsets or learning, or even just thought processes that they may not know about. And me investing in my first coach is really what drove my chapter and the changes that has made in my life.
My story is called The Formula of Grief, and it's based upon my life and the tragedies that have happened within my life. You know, I'm a suicide survivor. I've had many attempts, many different hospitalizations and things of that nature. I've been through therapy and all different kinds of things, and I was always ashamed of it. But when I actually look around and through this project, I've taken a look at myself and realized that I'm no different than anybody else. It's not to be ashamed. Mental health is not something to be ashamed of. Even loss, we can grow through loss. And this chapter here walks through all of the deaths that have happened within the course of my life that have changed me in some way or given me an opportunity to grow and learn from, whether I chose to or not.
So the chapter is really about my entrepreneurial journey and what I learned along the way and what I want to teach other people. I mean, I'm going to give you an example of one of the things that I've learned is that as an entrepreneur from the very beginning, we all think that we have to wear all of the hats and do all of the things necessary. If you're an entrepreneur, you understand that. If you're not, we are the accountant, the telephone answerer. We do all of it, everything before we get to do the work that we chose to be an entrepreneur for. So I wanted to kind of distill that myth a little, because what I learned is that had someone given me some tools, I would not have done all of that with my business. So I am really trying to share that with others so that you know that we don't have to work 50, 60 hours a week. I know we all wear that like a badge of honor, but it's not real. We don't have to do that.
One of the stories is about going through the 2008 recession and how that affected my business, which basically was a closure and then a bankruptcy. And, you know, I know I've heard a lot of stories lately about people having business concerns with the pandemic and then, you know, some things going on currently in the economy and maybe the future. You know, part of being a business owner is worrying about your business like all the time, I think. So I'm sure that anybody that owns a business or that is an entrepreneur is considering doing that, has had some of the thoughts and had some of the potentially some of the experiences I have. And I really wanted to share this story because I think it's really important to know that having a struggle like that or going through a closure or bankruptcy is just a part of business. It's not a failure. And I'm excited to share some of my insights and ahas and lessons from that.
My chapter is about the struggles that I went through in life with health issues that I had, a lot of heart conditions, other problems and struggles, and how that really changed the way that I think about life and how I approach life. This was definitely a time in my life where, well, it's been a long road, like Dina was saying, and scare is kind of an understatement. There's a lot of times where I didn't know if I was going to live or die. And like I said, it really helped me to find different ways to focus my mind so that I can move forward and overcome through the different trials that I have and do what I do today and be here and be a part of this awesome book and sharing my story with people.
I wrote about how it's okay to not be okay. And what that means is I talked about my childhood, which was filled with child abuse, and the things that were done to me and the things that I did and the harm that I caused, and that we don't have to hide from our painful past and we don't have to hide it from anyone else. And I found that through the power of storytelling, of sharing my story and having other people share their stories with me, I found out that I wasn't alone, that there were many, many people who experienced the same thing I did. I always thought I was so different from everyone else and beyond help, and just connecting with people, having that human connection and sharing stories and identifying and being able to put it all out on the table and have somebody look at me and accept me and not judge me the way that I was judging myself was so helpful. And that even if you don't grow up being told you're good enough, you're smart enough, or having that encouragement, like there are other ways to tap into support outside of your, biological family, and find people who will love and support you and accept you no matter what.
So my chapter is called A Series of Unfortunate Events. And so that's really what it's about. When I write, I feel like writing kind of comes through me, right? I don't think about what I'm writing. It just sort of comes through. And what came through for me was the 8 years that I spent going through my divorce in my first marriage. And, it was really rough. A lot of things happened during that time. Everything from dealing with drugs, alcohol, custody problems. And then, the message really is no matter what you're going through, you can get through it, and there's light on the other side. And so that's really the message that I wanted to send. I wrote a lot about my story and less about how I got over what had happened, but it was because the story needed to be told, I think, more than the overcoming of it, because things can just get so crazy in your life, and you think that there's no way out, but there always is. There's always a way out.
So, of course, mental health is something that is very important to me, as with you and most likely anyone that's really watching this. But certain things, especially as guys, we don't really speak about these things and what have you. And the chapter that I wrote was about the irony of life, which was really based upon a speech that was at my high school graduation. And so many things could go wrong in life. And as with everyone, definitely a lot has gone wrong in my life. And even just before this interview, for example, I'm at work here, and as you can see, I'm in the vehicle right now because I literally just ran out, avoid some crisis. Our tech guy is on leave, and I'm the backup, if you will, and we lost all power, all the registers, everyone, all the customers are in the place, and they're all looking at me. And I was up the road, so I literally ran back and set this whole thing up to get it working. So it's kind of on topic right before I do this interview that things are going to go wrong in life, and that was really the gist of the chapter, in the sense that, when I left high school, or all my life, I always had all these plans of how I wanted everything to go. And the irony is nothing really goes to plan, but enjoying the journey of life.
My story, to encapsulate it, it centers around an experience I had when I was 13. And I was sexually abused at the hands of my then stepfather, my current stepfather. Awesome. Yet in that moment, right, the moment that began to define the rest of my life, I chose to write about it. It really was what happened after the fact. That experience as a young girl, highly impressionable. I was bright and shiny and just flitting about in life, and suddenly, wham! It was a life-changing experience. It altered the direction of my life. It changed how I relate to myself, to others, to the world. I became hypersensitive, and so my book details, yes, the experience that altered my life as a young lady, and then led to how I was engaging the world at large, and holding on to shame and blame and guilt and all of those things that occur as a result of something like that, naturally.
So as a young man, I knew that I wanted to become a professional photographer. I had the camera in my hands since I was like 8 years old. And I wasn't allowed to go that route, and when I got older and was going to college, so I eventually became a police officer in my hometown of Worcester, Mass. And from the time that I was in the police academy, it just became very clear that I didn't fit into their mold. I solved problems using my head, my heart, and the law, while many of my peers did it through brute force and intimidation, treating the public like the enemy. So that began a 10-year period of me being blackballed, bullied, and treated like a pariah, which resulted in me suffering from some pretty severe anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, and now obsessive compulsive behavior. And that's now been going on, either being in a toxic work environment or suffering from these things for the last 28 years. But through burying myself into my hobbies, things like photography and listening to music whenever possible, riding my Harley all around New England, like you mentioned, looking for places to get iced coffee, ice cream, or goats. That keeps me grounded.
It really is the story of my daughter's life, and then through the stages of up to and including her death, and how I got to the point of celebration and be able to celebrate her life and what it means to me and how it can affect and impact others.
Okay, my chapter is about me, and it starts with the idea that we're all stars, because our hearts are beating and electricity is pulsing through our bodies. And when I started to investigate this idea, I wanted to find out who I am, and I wanted to challenge myself and put myself through something difficult, and no matter what, come out on top. And I did that with some performance in the world, acrobatics and acting, and it really challenged me, and it burst my ego bubble, and it also introduced me to who I am and what I'm capable of. And my chapter is about that story.
My chapter was called The Next, and it talks about that journey of forgiveness and what that looks like when you're fully stepped into forgiveness. We talk about forgiveness and we offer forgiveness often, right? But yet there's still patterns that may come up and arise, or behaviors that it's evident that forgiveness has not really kind of manifested within your full being, and it's affecting different areas of your life.
My chapter is really about change. My title was, If You Want to Change Your Life, Prove It. And I wrote that I was in treatment 3 years ago because I struggle with alcohol use disorder and depression and anxiety and many other things. And I learned a lot in that treatment program. And I started writing books after that. I gave a TEDx talk and a commencement speech, and mental health and addiction really became my passion because I struggled with it for so many years. And, when I was doing well, I wrote that chapter because that's what I learned in treatment. And I basically took the treatment process and how it related to change.